I never planned to become invisible, but that's exactly what happens when you're a secretary at Meridian Enterprises. For 3 years, I was nothing but furniture to most of the executives who strode past my desk every morning. Barely worth a nod, let alone actual eye contact. Coffee, 2 sugars, Blake from marketing would bark while scrolling through his phone. Schedule the Robinson meeting for Thursday. No, wait, Friday. My golf game is Thursday. This from Diane, our CFO, who never once remembered my name despite me handling her expense reports for 3 years straight. They saw my desk. They saw my function. They never saw me. Even on my first day, I knew what I was walking into. The receptionist had given me a look of genuine pity when I mentioned I'd be Mr. Harrington's new executive assistant. Good luck with that one, she'd said. The last 3 didn't make it 6 months. I smiled and nodded, but inside I was thinking, they weren't me. You see, I'm Catherine Reeves. Well, Catherine Spencer Reeves if we're being formal, but I've gotten used to just being Kate or Hey You, or the ever-popular silent point-and-snap combination that apparently passes for communication among Meridian's executive class. I should back up and explain how I ended up here, invisibly running a company that had no idea who I really was. My grandfather, William Spencer, founded Meridian Enterprises 47 years ago. It started as a small consulting firm and grew into the $3 billion corporation it is today. Grandpa Will was a legend in the industry. Brilliant, innovative, and surprisingly decent for someone with his level of success. When he died 5 years ago, my father, Thomas Spencer, took over as CEO. Dad was cut from the same cloth as his father. Smart and fair, but with a sharper edge that helped Meridian dominate in an increasingly competitive market. I admired him more than anyone else in the world, which made it all the more devastating when his heart gave out during a board meeting last year. What the public knows, Thomas Spencer passed away suddenly, leaving Meridian in the hands of his longtime COO, Richard Harrington, until the board could determine long-term leadership. What the public doesn't know, my father never fully trusted Richard Harrington, and he'd spent the last decade secretly preparing me to take over the company. Katie, he'd told me during one of our weekend strategy sessions, knowledge is power, but announced knowledge is vulnerable. Learn everything first. Lead second. So while I have an MBA from Wharton and had been training under my father's guidance for years, to the world I was just another trust fund kid who preferred spending daddy's money to earning her own. My social media accounts, carefully curated of course, showed a carefree socialite with expensive tastes and minimal ambition. Meanwhile, I was learning every aspect of my family's business, working under different names at our subsidiaries and preparing for the day I'd step into my father's shoes. The day after his funeral, I met with our family attorney, Mr. Goldman, a man who'd been with our family since before I was born. Your father's instructions were quite clear, he said, his voice gentler than I'd ever heard it. You're to spend 1 year working directly under Richard Harrington as his executive assistant, evaluating the company from the inside. After that year, you have 2 options: reveal yourself and claim your inheritance, or... He hesitated. Or what? I asked. Or sell your shares and walk away. Your father believed that if after seeing the company from the ground up you decided it wasn't for you, that would be the right call. I almost laughed. Dad knew me too well. There was never a chance I'd walk away from Meridian. This was just his way of making sure I knew exactly what I was fighting for. So, Catherine Spencer Reeves became Kate Reeves, a 28-year-old with a generic business degree and a decent but unremarkable resume. I moved out of my downtown penthouse into a modest apartment, traded my designer wardrobe for business casual basics, and showed up for an interview with Meridian HR. The disguise was simple but effective. Different hairstyle, no designer clothes, minimal makeup, glasses I didn't need, but that changed my face just enough. Most importantly, I carried myself differently. Slightly hunched, perpetually apologetic, eager to please. Nothing like the confident woman who had occasionally accompanied her father to industry events. Not a single person recognized me. Not even Richard Harrington, who'd known me since I was 16. And so began my year of invisibility. Kate, where's the Bennett proposal? Harrington needs it 5 minutes ago. That's Jessica, Harrington's other assistant. She's been with him for 7 years and sees herself as some kind of executive assistant royalty. In reality, she's just better at taking his abuse than most. Already on his desk, I said without looking up from my monitor. I put it there this morning when he mentioned the lunch meeting. Jessica's mouth tightened. She hated when I anticipated needs before she did. Well, he can't find it. I sighed, reached into my drawer, and pulled out the duplicate copy I'd prepared. Because of course Harrington had lost it. He lost everything that wasn't nailed down. Here, I said, holding it out. Maybe put a bright post-it on this one. She snatched it from my hand without a word of thanks and click-clacked her way back to Harrington's office in her perpetually impractical heels. I turned back to my computer screen, where I was reviewing the quarterly projections Harrington would be presenting to the board next week. They were, to put it kindly, manipulated. Revenue forecasts pumped up by at least 12%, expenses mysteriously reduced, productivity metrics that bore no resemblance to reality. This had become routine in the 10 months since I'd started. Harrington was cooking the books, not enough to trigger external auditors, but enough to make himself look like a miracle worker who'd smoothly transitioned the company after my father's death. What he didn't know was that I'd been documenting every discrepancy, every fudged number, every misleading projection. My father had taught me to read between the lines of financial reports since I was old enough to understand basic math. Morning, Kate. I looked up to see Daniel Chen from Legal giving me a friendly nod as he walked by. Daniel was one of the few people at Meridian who actually seemed to see the human being behind the administrative function. He'd stop and chat about non-work topics, remember details about my weekend plans, and always said please and thank you. Morning, Daniel. Your coffee order should be here in about 5 minutes. He looked surprised. I didn't order coffee. I smiled. I know, but you've got that meeting with Harrington and the board at 9:30, and you always forget to get coffee beforehand. Then you spend the whole meeting wishing you had caffeine. Daniel blinked, then laughed. Am I that predictable? Not predictable, just observable. Something flashed across his face. Surprise, maybe even respect. You know, most people in this building don't notice much beyond their own concerns. I shrugged. Noticing things is basically my job description. He studied me for a moment longer than was comfortable. You're wasted as an assistant, Kate. Have you ever thought about... Reeves, Harrington's voice boomed from his office. I held up one finger to Daniel. Duty calls. Good luck in the meeting. Richard Harrington was exactly what central casting would send if you asked for entitled corporate executive. Tall, silver-haired, perpetually tanned, with the kind of confidence that only comes from decades of people telling you you're right, even when you're wrong. Explain this, he said, jabbing his finger at a section of the Bennett proposal. I stepped closer to see what he was pointing at. It was the risk assessment section, the one I'd expanded considerably from his original draft. That's the comprehensive risk analysis you asked for, I said. You mentioned the board was concerned about. This is 3 pages longer than what I wrote. He cut me off. It makes us look uncertain. What it did was acknowledge actual risks instead of glossing over them with corporate buzzwords. The board wasn't stupid. They'd see through Harrington's fluff. My version gave them real information while proposing solid mitigation strategies. I thought it showed thorough planning, I said carefully. Identifying potential issues proactively demonstrates strategic thinking. Harrington glared at me. Did I hire you to think strategically, Reeves? I bit back the response I wanted to give. No, sir. No, he agreed. I hired you to support my strategy. Print this again with just my original section. And next time, don't try to improve my work. I nodded and turned to leave. And Kate? He added, his voice dropping to that pseudo-friendly tone he used when he was about to say something particularly condescending. I know you're trying to prove yourself, but this isn't how to do it. Know your place. My place. If he only knew. I smiled blandly. Yes, sir, it won't happen again. As I walked back to my desk, I passed the glass-walled conference room where several board members were gathering. Most of them I recognized from working with my father. Old men in expensive suits who'd been with the company for decades. 2 of them nodded vaguely in my direction as I passed. I'd served them coffee countless times, taken notes in their meetings, scheduled their appointments. Not one of them had any idea who I really was. My phone buzzed with a text from Mr. Goldman. 2 months left. Still committed to the plan? I texted back a single word. Absolutely. The thing about being invisible is that you hear everything. People talk freely around assistants, as if we're not really there. Or worse, as if we wouldn't understand the significance of what we're hearing, even if we were listening. That's how I learned about Project Phoenix. I was arranging lunch orders in the small kitchen off the main conference room when Harrington and Marcus Webb, our head of acquisitions, walked in, deep in conversation. The tender offer needs to go out next week if we want to stay ahead of the Spencer girl, Webb was saying quietly. I froze, my back to them, pretending to sort napkins. She's still tied up with Goldman, Harrington replied. The old man is following Thomas's ridiculous instructions to the letter. We've got at least 2 more months before she can make any moves. Webb sighed. I still don't understand why Thomas left his voting shares in trust for a full year. The company's vulnerable. Because Thomas Spencer was a sentimental fool who thought his precious daughter needed time to find herself after his death, Harrington said with a sneer. The man built an empire but couldn't see that his own offspring was nothing but a party girl with an Instagram account. I pressed my lips together hard, focusing on keeping my breathing even. Still, the board is getting nervous, Webb continued. If she decides to come in and clean house... She won't. Harrington cut him off. By the time her trust restrictions expire, Project Phoenix will be complete. Meridian will be carved up, the valuable parts absorbed into Apex Holdings, and little Katie Spencer will inherit nothing but corporate scraps. And the best part? It'll all be completely legal. They moved deeper into the kitchen, and I slipped out quietly, my heart pounding. Project Phoenix, a plan to dismantle my father's company. My company, from the inside. No wonder Harrington had been shifting assets, restructuring departments, and pushing through unusual partnerships over the past few months. He wasn't preparing Meridian for future growth. He was setting it up for controlled demolition. And Apex Holdings. I knew that name. A private equity firm notorious for acquiring companies, stripping them for parts, and discarding what remained. Their CEO, James Mercer, had been my father's rival for years. I returned to my desk, mind racing. I needed more information, and I needed it fast. You're here late? I jumped, nearly knocking over my coffee mug. Daniel Chen was standing in the doorway of the small copy room where I'd been scanning documents. Jesus, Daniel, wear a bell or something. He smiled apologetically. Sorry, didn't mean to startle you. He nodded toward the scanner. Important stuff? Just some filing, I lied, casually sliding the Phoenix documents under a random expense report. Harrington wants everything digitized by the end of the month. Daniel leaned against the doorframe. At 8:30 p.m., that seems above and beyond, even for you. I shrugged. Beats fighting traffic. What's your excuse? Deposition prep. We've got that class action heating up. He studied my face. You look intense. Everything okay? For a wild moment, I considered telling him everything. Daniel had always struck me as one of the few genuinely decent people at Meridian, but I couldn't risk it, not when I was so close to the finish line. Just tired, I said. End of a long week. He didn't look convinced, but nodded anyway. Well, don't stay too late. Whatever Harrington's got you doing, it can wait till Monday. After he left, I turned back to the Phoenix documents. 3 more weeks. I just needed to maintain my cover for 3 more weeks, gather enough evidence to stop Harrington, and then I could finally reveal who I really was. But as I scanned page after page of Harrington's plans to systematically dismantle my father's legacy, a cold certainty settled in my stomach. I couldn't wait that long. I need access to the executive server. Jessica looked at me like I'd asked for the launch codes to nuclear missiles. Excuse me? For the Anderson audit, I explained patiently. Harrington wants me to pull all correspondence from the last fiscal year. Then he can give you access himself, she said, turning back to her screen. I'd anticipated this. He tried. His admin credentials aren't working, and IT is backed up with the system upgrade. He told me to ask you since you already have access. Jessica's posture straightened, her ego visibly inflating at the idea that she had something Harrington needed. Why doesn't he just call AITA and have them prioritize his request? He is the CEO. Acting CEO, I corrected automatically, then winced internally. Her eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? I backpedaled. Nothing. Just that technically the board never confirmed him as permanent CEO after Mr. Spencer passed. Look, he's in a terrible mood already. Do you really want to be the one to tell him he has to wait for it? That did it. No one wanted to be the bearer of bad news to Harrington when he was in one of his moods. Fine, she said, lowering her voice. I'll log you in, but you can only use my terminal, and I need to be present the whole time. Perfect. Of course, I completely understand. 20 minutes later, I had what I needed. Confirmation that Harrington had been in communication with Apex Holdings for months, even before my father's death. The timestamps on some emails went back over a year. While pretending to search for Anderson correspondence, I forwarded key Phoenix documents to a secure email address only Mr. Goldman could access. Find what you needed? Jessica asked as I wrapped up. Yes, thanks. This will save hours of work. I gave her a grateful smile. I owe you one. She almost smiled back before catching herself and resuming her usual disdainful expression. Just don't make a habit of it. As I walked back to my desk, I noticed Harrington in his office with James Mercer himself, the CEO of Apex Holdings. They were laughing, looking at something on Harrington's tablet. My father's portrait hung on the wall behind them, a constant silent witness to Harrington's betrayal. I see you, I thought toward Harrington, and soon you'll see me too. The next week passed in a blur of activity. While maintaining my secretary facade, I worked with Mr. Goldman to prepare for what we were now calling Disclosure Day. Evidence was compiled, board members were quietly contacted for an emergency session, and legal documents were drawn up. Meanwhile, Harrington grew increasingly animated. He scheduled a company-wide meeting for Friday afternoon, the same day I'd planned my revelation, to announce what he called an exciting new chapter for Meridian. Project Phoenix was clearly reaching its endgame. On Thursday evening, as I was preparing to leave, Daniel stopped by my desk. Big announcement tomorrow, huh? He said casually. Any insider info you can share? I looked up at him, weighing my words carefully. Let's just say, things aren't always what they seem. He tilted his head, studying me with that same intense gaze he sometimes had, like he was trying to see past my carefully constructed facade. Kate, he said quietly, I'm not sure what's going on, but if you ever need backup, I'm around. The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. For a moment, I almost told him everything. Instead, I just nodded. I appreciate that. More than you know. He seemed about to say something else when Harrington's voice boomed from his office. Kate, I need you. Daniel rolled his eyes sympathetically. Your master calls. Not for much longer, I murmured, then louder. See you tomorrow, Daniel. Don't miss the meeting. Friday morning dawned bright and clear, a perfect day for revelations. I dressed carefully. A tailored charcoal gray suit I'd kept hidden in the back of my closet. Not Kate Reeves' usual bargain rack business casual. Beneath it, a deep blue silk blouse that matched my eyes, my father's eyes. I styled my hair differently, wore contacts instead of my fake glasses, and applied makeup with a practiced hand. When I looked in the mirror, Catherine Spencer Reeves stared back at me. But for one more day, I'd be Kate. Just long enough to spring the trap. I arrived at the office early, before Jessica, before anyone except security. I'd been arriving early for months, establishing a pattern so no one would question it today. I wasn't surprised to find Harrington already in his office. He'd been working longer hours as Project Phoenix approached its conclusion, often appearing before his assistants arrived. Morning, sir, I said from his doorway. Can I get you anything? He barely glanced up. Coffee, black. And tell Jessica to bring in the Apex presentation when she gets in. Of course. I hesitated, savoring the moment. Excited about today's announcement? That got his attention. He looked up, a rare smile spreading across his face. It's a game changer, Kate. The kind of deal that makes careers. Or breaks them, I thought. I'm sure it will be memorable, I said, smiling back. As I turned to go, he called after me. Oh, and Kate? Order in something nice for lunch. Champagne, too. We'll be celebrating. Already done, sir, I replied. I ordered champagne yesterday. Just not for the reason he thought. By 2 p.m., the large conference room was filled to capacity. All senior management, department heads, and key team members were present, with others watching via video link from conference rooms throughout the building. Excitement buzzed through the air, the kind tinged with anxiety that accompanies big corporate announcements. Rumors had been flying all week. Merger? Acquisition? IPO? No one knew for sure, but everyone sensed something massive was coming. I sat quietly in the back corner, watching as Harrington worked the room like a politician at a fundraiser. Beside him was James Mercer from Apex, along with 3 members of Mercer's executive team. The board members filed in last, taking their seats at the front. I caught Mr. Goldman's eye as he entered, and he gave me an almost imperceptible nod. Everything was ready. At precisely 2:15, Harrington stepped to the podium. "Thank you all for being here today," he began, his voice carrying that practiced gravitas he used for important announcements. "As you know, Meridian Enterprises has been in a transition period since the untimely passing of our founder's son, Thomas Spencer." I watched him closely as he spoke my father's name. No hint of shame, no flicker of guilt. "Today marks the end of that transition and the beginning of an exciting new era for our company," he continued. "I'm pleased to announce that Meridian Enterprises will be joining forces with Apex Holdings in a strategic partnership that will position both companies for unprecedented growth." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I could see confusion on some faces, concern on others. Everyone at Meridian knew Apex's reputation. "This partnership will allow us to streamline operations, combine our strengths, and create a market powerhouse that honors the Spencer legacy while boldly moving into the future." Honors the Spencer legacy. The audacity was almost impressive. "Over the coming weeks, you'll be hearing more about departmental restructuring, new leadership appointments, and strategic shifts," Harrington continued. "Change can be challenging, I know, but I assure you this partnership is in the best interest of Meridian, its employees, and its shareholders." He gestured toward James Mercer. "I'd like to invite Apex CEO James Mercer to say a few words about our shared vision." As Mercer took the podium, I caught Daniel's eye across the room. He wasn't applauding like the others. Instead, he was watching me with a question in his eyes. I gave him a small smile and glanced at my watch. It was time. I slipped out the back door and made my way to the small preparation room, connected to the main conference room. Mr. Goldman was waiting for me. "Ready?" he asked. I took a deep breath. I've been ready for a year. While Mercer droned on about synergy and market consolidation, corporate speak for gutting my father's company, I quickly changed from my secretary-appropriate blazer into my suit jacket, removed my fake glasses, and touched up my makeup. Mr. Goldman handed me a folder. "All the evidence is here, but also digitally available to the board now. They've reviewed the preliminary materials I sent yesterday." I nodded. "And the legal team?" "On standby. Security has been quietly briefed as well in case Harrington reacts poorly." Through the door, I could hear applause as Mercer finished speaking. Harrington's voice came next. "Before we proceed to signing the Memorandum of Understanding, I've been informed that our board chairman has a brief announcement." That was my cue. Mr. Goldman squeezed my shoulder once, then slipped back into the conference room through a side door. I heard the board chairman clear his throat. "Thank you, Richard. Ladies and gentlemen, before we move forward with any agreements, I must inform you that we have one final piece of business to address. As you know, Thomas Spencer's controlling shares in Meridian were placed in trust following his death, with specific instructions regarding succession. Today marks the conclusion of that trust period." The room had gone completely silent. "It is my privilege to introduce Meridian's majority shareholder and, as per Thomas Spencer's explicit wishes, our new chief executive officer." I straightened my shoulders, lifted my chin, and walked through the door. The collective gasp was audible. Hundreds of eyes turned toward me in confusion, then widening recognition. I walked confidently down the center aisle toward the podium, feeling the weight of my father's legacy with every step. Harrington's face was a study in shock, mouth slightly open, color draining rapidly. Beside him, Mercer looked between Harrington and me, confusion giving way to dawning comprehension. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman," I said as I reached the podium, my voice steady and clear, nothing like the apologetic murmur of Kate Reeves. For those who don't recognize me without a coffee order in my hand, I'm Catherine Spencer Reeves, daughter of Thomas Spencer and granddaughter of William Spencer, the founder of Meridian Enterprises. More murmurs swept through the room. From the corner of my eye, I could see Jessica's jaw practically on the floor. Daniel was leaning forward in his seat, a slow smile spreading across his face. "For the past year, I've been working among you as Kate Reeves, executive assistant to Richard Harrington. This was arranged by my father before his death. His final lesson to me about leadership and understanding every level of the business he built." I turned slightly to face Harrington directly. What wasn't part of the plan was discovering that the man my father trusted to temporarily guide his company was secretly arranging to sell it out from under his daughter. Harrington found his voice then. "This is preposterous. You can't just walk in here and—" "I can and I am." I cut him off smoothly. "Board members have already received comprehensive documentation of Project Phoenix, your scheme with Apex Holdings to dismantle Meridian and absorb its most valuable assets while discarding the rest, along with thousands of jobs." The room erupted in shocked conversations. Mercer was already backing toward the door, his legal team huddled around him. "The emails, the restructuring plans, the asset valuations, it's all there," I continued, addressing the room at large now, along with evidence that these discussions began months before my father's death. Harrington's face had gone from pale to mottled red. "You had no right to access those files. That's corporate espionage." I smiled. "It's not espionage when you're the owner, Richard. And as of 9 a.m. this morning, when the trust restrictions expired, I am the majority owner of Meridian Enterprises." I nodded to security, who had moved to stand near Harrington. "Mr. Harrington's access to our systems has already been revoked, and he'll be escorted from the building after this meeting. The board will be conducting a full investigation and appropriate legal action will follow." Harrington looked desperately toward the board members, finding no allies there. Most were staring at him with open disgust. A few were already reviewing the documents Mr. Goldman had provided. "You can't do this," Harrington said, but his voice had lost its commanding edge. "You're nothing but a secretary." I stepped closer to him, lowering my voice so only he and those nearby could hear. "I was never just a secretary, Richard. But even if I had been, you should have paid more attention to the person getting your coffee, scheduling your meetings, and handling your correspondence. The people you dismiss are often the ones who see everything." Security moved in then, standing on either side of him. Harrington looked around wildly, seeming to finally grasp the completeness of his downfall. I returned to the podium. "To everyone else in this room, Meridian employees, managers, and executives, I want to be clear. There will be no merger with Apex Holdings. There will be no mass layoffs or asset stripping. Meridian will remain intact, independent, and true to the vision my grandfather and father had for this company." The tension in the room visibly eased. Scattered applause broke out, quickly growing. "In the coming days, I'll be meeting with department heads and team leaders to discuss our path forward. There will be changes. Every company needs to evolve. But there'll be changes that strengthen us, not dismantle us." I paused, looking out at the sea of faces, people who until 5 minutes ago had barely noticed me, now hanging on my every word. My father taught me that a company is more than balance sheets and profit margins. It's people working together towards something bigger than themselves. For the past year, I've been watching, listening, and learning from all of you. I've seen who stays late to help a colleague meet a deadline, who takes time to mentor new employees, who has great ideas but no platform to share them. More faces were smiling now. People were nodding, some wiping away tears. Starting today, Meridian is entering a new chapter. Not the one Mr. Harrington planned, but one I believe my father would be proud of. I look forward to leading this company with transparency, integrity, and a genuine appreciation for every person who contributes to our success, no matter their job title. The applause was thunderous this time. As security escorted a shell-shocked Harrington from the room, I concluded my remarks and stepped away from the podium. Daniel was the first to reach me, grinning from ear to ear. "I knew there was something different about you." Though I have to admit, secret heir wasn't on my bingo card. I laughed. My real laugh, not Kate's careful, restrained one. You were one of the few people who actually saw me, Daniel. Thank you for that. Over the next hour, I shook countless hands, answered dozens of questions, and began the work of truly leading Meridian. The board voted unanimously to officially confirm me as CEO, and we scheduled emergency meetings to unwind Harrington's damage. Near the end of the day, as the excitement was finally calming, Jessica appeared at my new office door. Harrington's old office, my father's before that. "Miss Spencer Reeves," she said stiffly, "I've come to offer my resignation." I motioned for her to sit down. "Why would you do that?" You couldn't quite meet my eyes. "I think we both know I wasn't kind to you." "You weren't," I agreed. "But you were loyal to Meridian, even if you showed it by being loyal to the wrong leader. That's not nothing." Jessica looked up, surprised. "You're not firing me? Do you know why my father wanted me to work as an assistant before taking over the company?" She shook her head. "Because running a successful business means understanding every part of it, especially the parts most executives overlook. Executive assistants see everything, know everyone's secrets, and keep the entire operation running. I learned more in 1 year as Kate Reeves than in 4 years at business school." I leaned forward. "So, no, Jessica, I'm not firing you, but I am promoting you. I need a chief of staff who knows this company inside and out and isn't afraid to speak her mind. Interested?" The shock on her face was priceless. After a moment, she straightened her shoulders and nodded. Yes, thank you." "Don't thank me yet," I smiled. "Your first task is helping me repair the damage Harrington did. It won't be easy." As Jessica left to process her new reality, I turned to the window, looking out over the city my grandfather had chosen for Meridian's headquarters nearly 5 decades ago. On my desk sat my father's old nameplate, which Mr. Goldman had kept safe for me. Next to it, a small framed photo of my father and me at my college graduation, both of us smiling, neither of us knowing how little time we had left together. "We did it, Dad," I whispered. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "CEO looks good on you. Dinner tonight to celebrate? You can tell me what it was like being invisible." I smiled and texted back. "Visibility has its advantages. Pick me up at 8. 1 year of invisibility. A lifetime of being seen ahead." Hey, listeners, thanks for tuning in to today's story. If you enjoyed The Invisible Heir, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss our weekly uploads. Have you ever been completely underestimated at work? Or maybe you've had a secret that changed everything when revealed. Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to check out our sponsor for this episode. Now let's read some of your comments from last week's story.